Okay, thanks to about 100 different posts on various photography boards questioning the X-T3 build quality. However, no one's ever provided evidence of anything. It just came into question since the X-T2 is made in Japan. The X-T3 is quote-unquote made in China, but it's actually not made in China. It's assembled in China. We'll talk about that here in a second. Over here we have an X-T2 that thought it could swim, but turns out X-T3s can't swim in deep water for some odd reason. That was this camera. It's actually assembled in China, okay? It's not made in China. Huge difference. We'll talk about that here in just a second. Here's one thing that actually did that not only made the X-T3 a hair tougher than the X-T2, but it also saved themselves a couple bucks because people are actually asking about the fact that the X-T3, which is right here, has fewer screws in it than the X-T2. By looking at the bottom of the camera, what they failed to notice is the X-T2, and I repair cameras, and I'll show that to you here in a second. This is the same X-T2 that thought it could swim in a very deep pool and it didn't survive, like any other DSLR camera wouldn't survive, is a split magnesium chassis. Okay, I'll show that to you right here because this is also an X-T2, and that's the reason why it actually has more screws. There's actually a front plate, a back plate, and a top plate on the X-T2 chassis right here. You can see where it's split right here. Just two clamshell pieces and the top half. They're actually able to save a couple dollars, actually eliminate a few screws, and probably an extra dollar or two in assembling of the camera by just using a single, and this is powder coat. You'll ask me the difference about the silver on the X-T3 versus the, what did they call that on the X-T2? It was not silver, it was space gray. There's a specific name Fujifilm used for the gray X-T2. It was actually a somewhat laborious and expensive anodizing process. I'm nearly 100% certain this is powder coating. Looking really closely with a magnifying glass, I'm nearly 100% certain it's powder coating, which is really awesome stuff. Very, very tough. But they use a single bottom plate, okay? I've gone over the X-T3 top to bottom, left to right, many times, and there's not going to be a single person that's going to complain about the build quality of the X-T3. What's really important is that a digital camera is only a few different parts. Let's talk about that, and also talk about made in China versus assembled in China. Here is the only thing that actually comprises, and this is all parts from the X-T2. This X-T2 over here, this is the X-T2 that took a swim. A main board, a shutter mech, a sensor, some dials, the EVF, and the LCD. Okay. The important thing is obviously magnesium chassis on the X-T2, also magnesium chassis with a slight design change on the bottom, since it's not a split front rear magnesium clamshell like on the X-T2. It's actually sturdier on the X-T3. That's a better design that allows for less flexure of the body on the X-T3. Because of that, you only have main board, shutter mech, sensor, EVF, and LCD. Here's the important thing, okay? All of these are cast magnesium chassis, same thing as the XH1, okay? Cast magnesium. The main boards are coming from the same supplier for the X-T3. So are the shutter mechanism. Now, there might be a different sensor in the X-T3. It might be a Samsung instead of a Sony. This is an X-T2 sensor, which is a Sony sensor, so it might actually be a different sensor. The dials are exactly the same. They are etched, okay? Trust me, when I tell you I went over this with a magnifying glass, I did, okay? This is an X-T2 dial. The etching is 100% identical on the X-T3, except for this is powder coated, but they are actually etched on the dial. It's not printed on there, so they're not going to wear off, due to finger acid or something like that. Same thing on the sub dials, and this is from an X-T2. Now it's plastic, okay? This is from an X-T2. The exact same thing on the X-T3. Actually, I think these are polycarbonate, not plastic. Well, polycarbonate is a type of plastic, but specificity is divinity. This, by the way, is what you're actually looking at through your viewfinder. This is the little TV screen. This is the EVF. The electronic viewfinder, which has a magnifying glass in front of it that you adjust with the diopter control. This is the EVF from the X-T2. Okay, so the important thing here, let's make a distinction. assembled in China, but not made in China. Okay, all these parts from the X-T2 are the same parts that are in the X-T3, except for the sensor, which may be a different sensor. And they could have gone with, I don't know if they're using the same touch screen as the XH1. I don't know if LG or Panasonic is supplying Fujifilm with those screens, but it's still the same supplier. And I can't tell any difference between the LCD on the XH1 and the LCD on the X-T3. But, okay, this is all really that is inside of a digital camera. Main board, shutter mech, a sensor, and an EVF, and lastly, of course, not inside, but close enough, the LCD display. So let's make a distinction here. Can you repeat after me? Assembled in China, which, you know, if you want the camera cheap, you know, save a couple $100 on labor costs. And Fujifilm's plant in Japan, they themselves said it was not that big. I assume they're using that space right now for expanded lens production and the manufacture of the new GFX rangefinder. So all these parts are the same that make up the digital camera. Okay? Same parts in the X-T3. So they're going to save themselves some labor costs and also increase production. Yeah, that's exactly the correct corporate move that Fujifilm would do. They would have it assembled in China from the same parts that went into the X-T2. The only thing that's different, the same main board suppliers, obviously, is a different chipset. Here's the main processor from the X-T2 board, dual SD card slot. So obviously the main board is same supplier, but different processor, different buffer, obviously so. So point is the same supplier. Same shutter mech supplier, sensor, dials. There you go. You know what that is, right? That's the knob from the X-T2. Same knob. And yeah, that's powder coated. The actual process used to make that Sprace gray, which, what was the body? Like $100 more or something like that on the X-T2 if you order it into the they didn't call it silver, that gray color. It's because it's an expensive anodizing process. This is, I'm nearly 100% certain, is powder coating. Powder coating, folks. Most people don't know what powder coating. Look up powder coating. So there is nothing to bitch or complain about on the X-T3 build quality. Nothing. And in fact, it's actually a tougher chassis, which allows, because actually to glue this back together, it's actually very odd how they decided to go with the magnesium chassis on the X-T2. Yeah, without the countless bazillion screws, if you just, yeah, really tough. You see there's a lot of epoxy in there holding this together, a lot of epoxy. This is the X-T2 chassis. Cast magnesium, same as on the X-T3. Build quality is no less. What they did is they had it assembled in China to save on production labor costs and also therefore save you money and make an awesome camera really cheap. If you think that is just like a fanboy talk, doesn't matter, because you know what? It's the facts! The facts. Because last I checked with wise people, the only thing that mattered was the facts! The facts. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. Remember that? Joe Friday, right? And Fuji.